People think working as security and night shift is peaceful and boring, but not if you work at this new building. This is my story. The building always seemed normal in the daylight. Square-shaped red brick facade, and the kind of tired gray windows you'd expect on an aging office building. By day, it was bustling with workers, clicking keyboards, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. But at night, things were different. I'm David, a guy just trying to make ends meet. I used to work in a factory, but times changed, the factory shut down, and I found myself in this worn-out uniform, patrolling empty corridors. On the upside, the solitude meant I could listen to my favorite podcasts and the night shift pay wasn't too shabby. One evening, while munching on a sandwich in the dimly lit break room, old Mr. Jennings, the janitor, decided to join me. He had a mop in one hand and a kind of distant look in his eyes. "New here, aren't you?" he asked, taking a seat opposite me. "Yeah, just started last week," I replied, trying to be friendly. "It's quiet, I like it." He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Ever wonder why no one likes the night shift?" I raised an eyebrow. "Haven't really thought about it, why?" Jennings looked around, as if expecting someone to overhear. "This building, it's old, David. Older than either of us. And sometimes old places have echoes." He said the last word with a weight that made me pause. I chuckled nervously. Echoes, like ghosts. I'd always been a man of logic. Ghost stories were for kids around campfires. The janitor looked me straight in the eyes. "Just be careful, all right? And if you hear anything, don't go looking." That night, the janitor's words replayed in my mind. I shrugged it off, telling myself I had nothing to fear. The night was quiet, just like all the others. But as I passed by the renovated office on the 3rd floor, I froze. Whispers, the faint, indistinct murmur of a conversation I couldn't quite catch. My initial reaction was annoyance. Darn kids probably snuck in, I thought. I readied myself to give them a piece of my mind. As I approached the door, the whispers grew louder, mixed with the sound of footsteps. The door was slightly ajar, revealing a dim light inside. Pushing it open, I wasn't greeted by a group of mischievous teenagers, but a desolate room. Dust sheets covered most of the furniture. The only odd thing was a pile of old children's toys scattered on the floor. A wooden top, some marbles, a tattered doll. They looked out of place, like relics from another era. Suddenly I heard it, clear as day. A child's laughter echoing around the room. I spun around, trying to locate the source, but there was nothing. Just the toys and me. A chill ran down my spine. "Okay, David, pull yourself together," I told myself. There was probably a logical explanation. Maybe a toy with a battery-operated laugh. Yeah, that was it. However, when I picked up the doll to examine it, it was clear there were no modern electronics inside. Just straw stuffing and faded fabric. I put it down, my mind racing. The room suddenly felt colder, and the eerie silence weighed heavy on my ears. Backing out slowly, I decided to end my rounds early that night. Maybe Jennings was right. Maybe there were things in this building better left undisturbed. Returning to the security room, I tried to settle my racing heart. Maybe I was just tired, overworked, or maybe, just maybe, there was more to this building than met the eye. That night, I left with more questions than answers. As I locked the front door behind me, I made a silent promise to myself. Tomorrow, I'd search for a logical explanation. After all, there was no such thing as ghosts, right? After that unnerving encounter, I wasn't sure what to expect when I returned for my next shift. The sun had just set, casting long shadows on the empty parking lot. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the main door, hoping it was just a one-off experience. As the hours passed, the building remained as silent as ever. That was until I stumbled upon a stack of old newspapers in the security room. Out of sheer curiosity, I began to skim through the headlines. One particular clipping caught my attention. It was dated almost 5 decades ago and featured a black and white photo of the building, surrounded by fire trucks and a panicking crowd. The headline read, "Tragic fire at local toy factory claims lives." The story was heartbreaking. The factory, once located in the very building I was in, suffered a massive fire due to overlooked safety measures. Several workers were trapped inside, along with some children who were there for a factory tour. The article concluded with a list of the deceased. My heart sank when I saw the names of the children. Was this the reason behind those eerie sounds? The toys? The child's laughter? I couldn't help but wonder. The next few nights were more disturbing than ever. On one occasion, while patrolling the third floor, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. I stopped in my tracks when a ball bounced towards me from an open door. There was no breeze, no rational explanation for its movement. Another night, while in the break room, the landline phone rang suddenly. Startled, I picked it up, expecting it to be a wrong number. Instead, I was greeted with silence, followed by that same child's giggle I'd heard before. I slammed the phone down, trying to shake off the mounting fear. Each incident chipped away at my logical thinking. The whispers grew louder, more frequent, with words becoming discernible. "Help us," they seemed to plead. Doors slammed shut unexpectedly, trapping me momentarily in the rooms. Desperate to find answers, I reached out to the town's local historian, hoping he might shed light on the building's past. Sitting in a quaint cafe, the elderly man, Mr. Evans, explained the building's tragic history. He painted a vivid picture of that fateful day, describing the chaos, the suffocating smoke, and the agonizing screams. But the most haunting detail was his account of the owner, a man who cut corners to save money, leading to the catastrophe. The townsfolk considered him responsible for the tragedy, and he disappeared soon after the incident. Many believed he couldn't live with the guilt. What unsettled me the most was when Evans took out an old photo of the factory owner. The resemblance between the two of us was uncanny. My heart raced. Was this why I felt so connected to these incidents? As days turned into weeks, I found it increasingly difficult to differentiate reality from illusions. I often dreamt of being in the building during the fire, watching helplessly as smoke engulfed everything. But in these dreams, I wasn't a mere spectator. I was the owner, facing the accusatory eyes of those trapped inside. The lines between the past and present began to blur. I'd wake up in cold sweats, my hands smelling of smoke, even though there was no source. I could feel the spirit's anguish, their need for acknowledgement, and more than anything, closure. One evening, as I walked down a dimly lit corridor, a voice whispered, "Why did you leave us?" Startled, I spun around to find a little girl, her eyes filled with tears and soot-covered face, standing a few feet away. She looked eerily similar to one of the children from the newspaper clipping. Frozen in place, I watched as she extended her hand, revealing a burnt doll, identical to the one I had found earlier. "You promised to save us," she whispered before vanishing into thin air. Feeling overwhelmed, I found myself doubting my sanity. Were these genuine, supernatural encounters, or was my mind playing tricks on me? Each incident felt so real, yet so impossible. The weight of these experiences began to take a toll on my mental health, leading me to question if I was fit for the job or if I should walk away for good. But deep down, I knew running wasn't the answer. These spirits deserved closure, and perhaps in some way, I was destined to provide it. Determined to face my fears and find a resolution, I decided to confront the haunting head-on, hoping to bring peace to both the restless spirits and myself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of research and introspection. I realized I needed guidance, someone who could navigate the realm of the supernatural. Through whispers and hushed recommendations, I was introduced to Ms. Alden, a medium known to have helped many souls find peace. We met at the building on a misty evening. Ms. Alden, with her piercing blue eyes and silver hair tied in a tight bun, looked every bit the seer one would imagine. She brought with her a small satchel filled with herbs and crystals. There was no room for skepticism now. I was desperate for answers. Without much conversation, she began walking through the hallways, often stopping to murmur to herself or touch the walls gently, as if feeling their heartbeat. I trailed behind, watching intently. She halted at the third-floor office, the epicenter of the disturbances. "This is where it's strongest," she whispered. I nodded, recounting the laughter, whispers, and the child's apparition. Taking a deep breath, Ms. Alden began setting up a circle with her herbs and crystals. As the last stone was placed, the atmosphere thickened. A heavy silence enveloped the room, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Sitting cross-legged in the circle, she beckoned me to join her. With a lit candle between us, she began to chant softly, her voice echoing eerily in the vast emptiness. Minutes felt like hours, but slowly the room began to change. Shadows danced on the walls, forming shapes, the silhouettes of children and adults alike. A cold gust swirled around, bringing with it the scent of burning wood and old fabric. The spirits of those lost in the fire began to emerge, their faces etched with pain and confusion. At the forefront stood the little girl I had encountered earlier, her eyes locked onto mine. Ms. Alden's voice grew louder, more commanding. "We are here to help. Tell us what you seek." The little girl stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Justice, recognition. We were forgotten." Another spirit, an older man, spoke. "He promised to keep us safe, but he didn't." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the spectral crowd. I felt a weight on my chest, the burden of their grief and anger. Looking at their faces, I understood what I needed to do. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears forming. "While I am not the man you knew, I promise to help, to ensure your memories are honored." The little girl tilted her head, examining me. "You look like him," she said softly, a hint of sadness in her eyes. Ms. Alden, sensing the gravity of the moment, interjected, "What can we do to give you peace?" The spirits huddled, murmuring among themselves. The little girl, acting as their spokesperson, said, "A memorial, here in this building, a place where our memories live and our stories are told." Nodding, I replied, "I promise to make it happen. Your stories will be heard, and you'll never be forgotten again." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. As Ms. Alden began another chant, the spirits began to fade, their faces transforming from pain to gratitude. The little girl, before vanishing, mouthed a silent, "Thank you." When it was over, the room felt different, lighter. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by an aura of tranquility. In the weeks that followed, I worked tirelessly to establish a memorial on the 3rd floor. The company, hearing of the tragic history, supported the cause wholeheartedly. A room filled with photographs, artifacts, and stories from that fateful day was set up, ensuring that visitors and employees alike would remember those who had once filled the building with life. The disturbances ceased. No more whispers, no more apparitions. Instead, there was a sense of calm and reverence that pervaded the halls. I continued my duties as a security officer, but now with a renewed sense of purpose. Every night, I'd pay my respects at the memorial, often finding solace in the quiet reflection it offered. One evening, as I stood looking at the photographs, I felt a familiar cold gust. Turning around, I saw the translucent figure of the little girl smiling gently at me. "Thank you," she whispered before fading away. A warmth filled my heart, knowing that in some small way I had managed to heal old wounds and give peace to restless souls. The building might have once been a place of tragedy, but now it stood as a testament to the power of remembrance, healing, and redemption.